A flashlight stabs out into the darkness behind a house built on the very outskirts of town. Out here, there's nothing but untouched forest and wild animals, and whatever was right now stalking the woods behind Bobby Ford's home. The creature had been coming onto Ford's property for the last week, and some of the local hunters spoke of spotting a strange bear-like animal that ran like a man. Nobody has yet gotten a good look at it, but all that was about to change as Bobby Ford and two hunting buddies scanned the woods with their flashlights. Whatever it was, it had terrified Ford's family for the last 7 days, and armed with a shotgun, Ford had had enough. The last straw had been when Elizabeth, Ford's wife, had been relaxing in the living room late in the evening and heard a sound outside the open window. To her horror, a large, hairy arm with claws reached into the window, and as she screamed, she could see the red eye shine of something standing over 7 feet off the ground. Whatever it was, Ford aimed to put it down for good. Now, Ford and his buddy's flashlights scanned the woods. Once more, the creature had made itself known, throwing sticks, rocks, and making a general ruckus. The home Ford had just purchased was empty for many years. Perhaps whatever this thing was assumed it was now its territory, and it didn't much like the idea of Ford and his family hanging around. Another rock smashes into the wall beside Ford. This one is big enough to have caused some serious damage if it had hit any one of the 3 men. Angrily, Ford scans the forest with his flashlight. There, a hulking figure with dark brown, blackish fur. Spotted, the figure immediately ducks into the trees. Not this time, thinks Ford. The men give chase, their lights stabbing into the darkness ahead of them. The creature moves surprisingly fast through the thick underbrush, but finally the branches thin out and Ford gets his best view of it yet. It's massive, over 7 feet tall, likely weighing in excess of 300 pounds. Ford feels a cold shiver of fear run down his spine, but he fights it down as he raises his shotgun and fires. The beast is hit. With a thunderous smash, it topples over into the underbrush. The men begin to cheer, calling out to Ford as they advance, eager to claim the creature as proof of their nighttime tormentor. Then suddenly, there's the sound of women screaming inside the house. Rushing back toward the house, the women's screams are louder. There's not just one creature, but 2 of them. The women have barricaded themselves inside the house, and from the backyard, the men can hear something large on the front side of the house. Running around from the backside, the men spot the creature just as it leaves the front porch and dives into the cover of thick brush. Ford fires again, but in the thick brush and the darkness of night, he's unable to tell if he's hit the creature or not. The 3 terrified couples take shelter inside Ford's home for the night, keeping watch and determined to stay up all night. The Fouke monster began to appear in the area around Fouke, Arkansas in the 1950s. The first sighting was by a young 14-year-old boy who spotted the creature while out hunting for turkeys. According to him, the creature had reddish-brown hair and didn't seem to react at all when the boy fired at it with birdshot out of fear. Additional sightings during this time period also reported a large creature that walked on 2 legs with a reddish-brown coloration to its thick fur. Unlike other animals, this creature seemed to show no fear of humans, though it did tend to avoid them when possible. As word of the creature spread, residents of the nearby Jonesville confirmed the sightings, revealing that whatever this thing was, it had been spotted as far back as 1946, when it had gained the nickname of the Jonesville Monster. Digging deeper, though, reports in Arkansas of a similar bipedal creature with the same coloration were discovered going back to the 1850s. If someone was hoaxing the Fouke monster, then it must have been a family trait passed on from father to son. Investigators argued, after all, how could the exact same creature be reported over 100 years apart and have such similar physical characteristics? The monsters remained part of the local mythology until the 1971 attack on Bobby and Elizabeth Ford's home. After the incident, the police investigated the home and surrounding woods, and though they found no blood from Ford's alleged shooting of the creature, they did discover a set of strange 3-toed tracks and deep claw marks, along with damage to the house's porch. Bobby and his wife moved out of their brand new home shortly after. Just a few weeks later, the Fouke monster would reappear, spotted by 3 motorists as it crossed US Highway 71 before plunging once more into the dark woods. Once more, the creature left behind the peculiar 3-toed footprints, and as the summer passed by, even more footprints were discovered all around Fouke. The clearest footprints, however, were soon discovered by a soybean farmer who found a set of peculiar tracks leading across his field and into the woods. plaster prints of the footprints were made, and the farmer even created miniature replicas to sell as souvenirs, seriously hurting his credibility as a witness. As word of the creature spread, bounties were placed on its head for anyone who could shoot the Fok monster or at least get a photograph of it. Many hunters and amateur investigators attempted to claim these bounties, but all failed. Hunting and man-tracking dogs were even brought in several times, though the animals were unable to follow the creature's scent for long. 2 years after Bobby Ford's terrifying encounter, filmmaker Charles B. Pierce released a documentary-style horror film about the creature entitled The Legend of Boggy Creek. The film proved to be a great success and generated great hype around the creature, though interest would gradually wane outside of Fok over the years. Despite the rest of the world losing interest, though, sightings of the creature continued until modern day, with hunters, outdoor backpackers, and those living on the remote edges of town still reporting sightings of the creature. So what was the Fok monster, and could it have been real? Many comparisons have been drawn between the Fok monster and Bigfoot for obvious reasons. Both creatures are nearly identical in their description, and sightings of the more traditional Bigfoot cover the exact same type of heavily wooded and swampy environment that the Fok monster habitates, as well as its more traditional alpine habitat. Yet, unlike Bigfoot, which shows features unique to primates such as 5 toes, dermal ridges, and a mid-tarsal break, the Fok monster prints had none of these characteristics. Most Bigfoot researchers have thus renounced the tracks as being hoaxes. If, after all, the Fok monster was real, then it would almost certainly be a Bigfoot, and yet no Bigfoot tracks have ever been discovered outside of Fok with 3 toes. Perhaps, though, the Fok monster was a single deformed individual, though this would invalidate the eyewitness accounts of Bobby and Elizabeth Ford, as well as Bobby's brother and hunting companions, who all saw 2 separate creatures. In all likelihood, then, the tracks were merely hoaxes, and poorly done ones at that. Could the creature be real, though? Well, there's every chance that the Fok monster was nothing more than a misidentified bear, with black bears roaming Arkansas to this day and, despite their name, capable of sporting a brownish-reddish coat of fur. However, it's peculiar that reported sightings of man-like apes who walked upright on 2 legs were reported in the area over 100 years before the Fok monster became popular, lining up with similar reports across the country of wild men and great ape beasts that walk on 2 legs. Either the same creatures being perpetually hoaxed over the course of a century and a half, or possibly there really is a large bipedal ape-like creature stalking the creeks and swamps of southern Arkansas, along with wide stretches of North America. While the jury is still out on the Fok monster, it's hard to believe that a simple bear was enough to scare Elizabeth and Bobby Ford into abandoning a home they had owned for less than a week. So next time you're out deep in the woods alone or with friends, beware, because you may be the ones to prove the existence of an American myth in the worst way possible. Now go check out scientific evidence that Bigfoot actually exists, or watch this other video instead.